Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Adnan from AVRV Media, and today I want to talk about something that has been on my mind a lot lately. Why it is so difficult for me to leave the Fujifilm system behind despite the hiccups that I have been having in my previous shoots. In my last video, I shared my kind of really stressful experience with the XH2S from the autofocus issues and just the firmware 6.0 issues that I've had. And then on top of that, the overheating issue, which I have been I've been really thinking about that overheating issue a lot lately. I've been watching a lot of reviews on that and just to try to understand maybe it is something that I did wrong, because I have never had my XH2S overheat, especially with the fan attached to it. So you know what, I just went out there and I just started looking to see what other people have done as far as the overheating tests go, and I saw this one video where this guy literally put his XH2S with the fan outside in direct sunlight, and he just recorded for like 2-3 hours straight with no overheating issues. So that kind of leads me to believe that perhaps, you know, me setting up the Atomos Ninja V on top of the camera and then on top of that having it hooked up to a gimbal caused just way too much stress on the camera. That could be it. So I will, do more testing on that to really confirm that, but that could have just been me. So we will see. As far as the autofocus issue goes, that is something that I just can't fix. Yes, I can manually focus, but the manual focusing becomes really difficult when you're on a gimbal. And again, you're trying to record really fast-paced dynamic events like a horse race like I did last time. It becomes very difficult. And guys, I'm no expert in manual focusing, so let's just leave it at that. But here is why it is very difficult for me to leave the XH2S behind. The number one reason is the image quality. Now, I have talked about the image quality of this camera in the past and how incredible the image from this camera is, especially if you know how to color grade. Even if you know how to color grade a little bit, this camera produces an incredible, beautiful image that really looks like something out of a much more expensive camera. So that brings me to my next point. Interestingly enough, I had a comment in my previous video where I was, talking about this camera having all these issues, and this one gentleman said, "Hey, you know what? I actually use my XH2S as a B camera for my RED Helium," and I thought, "Wow, that is really, really incredible." So I just started to ask him some questions in the comments, and then I got a link. And the video that I saw was just somebody using their RED camera right next to their XH2S, and they color graded the footage. And honestly, it was very difficult for me to distinguish what was the XH2S and what was the RED camera. So, that just really says a lot about how powerful this camera is, and the fact that it comes in such a little small body. It's just, it really fools a lot of people because it really just looks like a regular photography camera. But those that know really what this sensor is all about. The other thing I want to talk about is the dynamic range on this camera is really astonishing. So I always go back to the test that Gerald Undone did with the image test, where he showed how this camera can get like 14 stops of dynamic range. So if you haven't seen Gerald Undone's review on this camera, I highly recommend that you do, because he is the man and he just does really good reviews on pretty much any gear that is out there right now, the latest and greatest. He is the man to check out these very detailed tests. So when he did his test with image test, just checking the dynamic range. With image test, you have your high dynamic range, really what is ideal and then you have like a middle range, which is really what you should be looking at. And that number is usually way lower than the high, obviously. So with the XH2S, for example, when he did his test, he ran the image through DaVinci's noise reduction, and just a small amount of noise reduction. And he ran it through, and then he tested the footage through Imatest, and it came back as 14 stops. And that was just incredible. And you can definitely see that there is a lot of dynamic range coming from this camera, you know, with these dynamic shots where, you know, you have just a really blown out background, and then you have a, you know, individual in front. You can really see that the dynamic range on this camera is just awesome. So I did talk about the Z6 Mark III in my last video, and I thought like, wow, this camera is like, it has everything. It's amazing. So then I started watching again Gerald Undon's Imatest for dynamic range on that camera, and it didn't really do that well. So that really hurts, because I thought that camera had everything, and it turns out that, you know, the dynamic range is, for me, is very, very important. It's probably one of the most important things to create just a really beautiful image. Now, the reason why this camera has so much dynamic range is because it has a stacked sensor. I keep saying this, that stacked sensor is such a big deal, especially the fact that this is an APS-C sized sensor. I have not seen a stacked sensor and APS-C in this price range. I mean, it may be out there, I just don't know about it. If it is, please let me know in the comments below, because I would love to know what camera has that besides the XH2S. So with that stacked sensor, the camera can read out data much quicker. So it reads out data in 14-bit instead of 12-bit. Now, bit and dynamic range are two different things. 12-bit, 12 stops of dynamic range, 14-bit, 14 stops of dynamic range, totally different things. But because the camera has so much data to play with, you're able to get that 14 plus stops of dynamic range. Now, the last reason why I really find it difficult to move away from Fujifilm is because I have been shooting with this system for a long time. I know how to color grade the footage. I know how to operate the menus. I have everything customized perfectly, and I know what the camera's limitations are. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I have tried Sony in the past. My most recent Sony camera that I've owned was a A7 Mark IV. That camera was really good. It was excellent. It takes amazing pictures, but for some reason, I just can't explain what it is. But when you get to a certain high ISO range, the noise pattern on that sensor just looks really bad. Like you're seeing like these little, almost small, tiny artifacts. I don't see anything like that with the Fuji. With the Fuji, I'm getting this, like, it just looks like film grain. That's really what, you know, other people have described it. That's what it looks like to me. And it's very easy to remove in post. DaVinci Resolve does an amazing job removing all of that grain. If you want to keep the grain, you can do that, and the image will still look good. So really, to wrap up this video, where am I going to go from here? I honestly think that what I'm going to do is further testing with the camera. Like I said, the camera has never overheated on me ever in the past, especially with the fan on. I need to see what the true limitations are and how long I can shoot with the Atomos. If I have to just use the Atomos only as a monitor, can I record simultaneously? Can I only record to the Atomos? There's a lot of variables here that are, you know, in play. I do want to say that when you plug in the Ronin RSC2, that's what I was using. When you plug it in to control the gimbal, the ISO settings and whatnot, and the record button, when you do that, the gimbal actually charges the camera. Now, when that's happening, the camera gets hot, and that makes a lot of sense. So I need to figure out if there's a way for me to just like turn that off and just use that USB-C connection as just a control connection and not charging. I need to look into that a little bit more. The autofocus issue, there's not much I can do. A lot of people have suggested that I roll back the firmware. I'm a bit like a little bit scared to do that. I don't want to brick my Fuji, but I may have to do that. So I'm gonna look into that a little bit more. The good news is that I don't really have any shoots planned because I will be out of the country for a little bit of time. So I am really hoping that around mid-July would be like ideal. Fujifilm fixes this autofocus issue and we can all live happily ever after. So guys, that is it for me today. I hope that this helped you in any way. If you own an XH2S and you're considering maybe going to something else, maybe you feel the same way I do. I know for me, it is very difficult to move away from the system as I'm so used to it. But if Fuji doesn't fix this autofocus issue, I will not have a choice but to go to something else. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.